Hey gang, so they dropped new numbers on us let's see, the week of the 22nd. And basically during that whole week I was going through and editing everything for CitCon, so I didn't get a chance to actually jump in and do this then. So this is a little behind the curve. And it turns out that they're going to be rolling out another one this week. So I thought that this might be a good time to just kind of go back and associate how everything that showed in CitCon, just to kind of go through the progress tracker and kind of show where those items are, the things that they showed off during CitCon. So if that sounds interesting, let's turn the lights down real low and get this. Damn it! Okay, so people that haven't seen this before, basically just kind of a real quick overview of what I do here. I go through the roadmap roundup, kind of talk about the changes that are listed there, look on the release view and kind of verify those changes or go over anything strange. They don't always mention everything on both of these two. And then the real bulk of this show is that I go through the progress tracker and just kind of talk about the major changes. This time I'm going to talk about the items that were showed off at CitizenCon and just kind of talk about where I think they might land in the next year. Because one of the things CR was saying was that they're really trying that everything they showed off at CitizenCon, they're going to be releasing in the next 12 months, which basically is through, even though they say 12 months, I think they're talking about all of 2024. So through IAE, through their December patch. But let's go ahead and get into this. So first of all, with the caveat, caveat number one is I am just a dude on the internet. I don't have any special information. I'm basically just going off of the progress tracker as it is and kind of drawing my own own conclusions based on the knowledge that I have from a variety of different sources, none of them internal to CIG. So if you hear me say something and that's contradicted by something verified that CIG has said, CIG is correct. Take their word over mine. Another thing is that the roadmap tracker, even though, so this is a good example here on actor status tier 2, even though something is completed, this is just tracking sprints in the agile system. So just because something is 100% completed, that just means their planned sprints are completed. It does not mean that this deliverable is ready to drop into the game. So with that in mind, let's get into this. So first of all, we'll start with the roadmap roundup. Notable changes for October 22nd, 2023. Progress tracker. As announced at the conclusion of CitizenCon 2953, Squadron 42 is now feature complete. The game is moved into polishing phase, which you'll see reflected on the progress tracker. I've found that little link. Additionally, Squadron 42 teams have now been divided into strike teams, represented as new teams on the progress tracker. These teams' headcount is represented by the main stakeholders, but the teams themselves are comprised of developers across multiple disciplines, including design, engineering, art, audio, and more. They'll all be working on a single deliverable, Squadron 42 polishing. As their tasks become more agile and they work towards beta and release, as was the case with Squad 42 teams previously, these teams will only display 1/4 of work at a time. We've added 4 strike teams to Progress Tracker with this publish, with additional ones to be added in the future. Release view. The following cards have been added to the release view. Ship Trespass. The interior of player ships are now considered trespass zones for those without permission to enter. I think basically, it might even say in the next sentence. Let's keep reading. Permission will be granted via the party system until more complex systems for managing crew and passengers is created. Players trespassing aboard a ship can be attacked by the owner of the ship and any player in their party without fear of committing a crime. So that's big. It also comes with they pulled away the sort of alert in your comms channel. So it used to be if you had your ramp down and you were at like a bunker or something like that, and you came back and you're like, damn, did somebody sneak onto my ship? You could look on your mobiGlass, pull up your comms, and in your ship comms, there would be that person, if they were there, would pop up. That doesn't happen anymore. And so this is kind of the compromise to that, where it really will be cat or mouse. You can find them, you can kill them, whether they're shooting at you or not, and you won't get a crime, whereas right now you will. So ship trespass, kind of a big deal. Drake Cutter Scout, building, balancing, and implementing Drake Interplanetary's reconnaissance ship, the Cutter Scout, into the game. So that was one of the new ones. Anvil F-8C Lightning, building, balancing, and implementing Anvil's heavy fighter, the F-8C Lightning, into the game. So let's pop on over to the release view. So new Crusader platforms are released. Actually, I have not done those missions. I might start doing those missions because I was looking for something new to do. Kind of tired of bunker missions, but those missions are actually pretty entertaining. New missions, retrieve consignment. Don't try to do those solo. You need at least one other person because you're going to spend time staring at the monitor, like refreshing it and stopping it from hanging up, while bad guys are spawning. So you need another person to do these consignment missions. Basically what you'll do is you'll kind of tweak the kiosk there, and then the little basically goodie spitter will spit out a goodie and you can take it up. Vehicle tractor beams is now committed, which is cool. They're showing the SRV here, which is definitely the vehicle tractor beam, but you've got tractor beams on the Connie Taurus, the Cutlass Black, the C1, the 315P, the Caterpillar. I believe the Reclaimer has tractor beams. The Vulture should, although that might come with the implementation of the next iteration of salvaging. So they might not all get their tractor beams at once, but vehicle tractor beams will at least be functioning, and then they can start rolling them out to the specific ships, would be my guess. They might do them all at once. I'd just kind of be surprised. New missions, Steal Evidence. So that's an SPK one, Security Post Korea. You can go in, basically where you'd get the little goodie spitter there that would just kind of spit out drugs and all sorts of things like that. You can actually steal evidence and clear someone's crime stat. Tentative ship trespass. So the fact that it's still tentative now is a little worrying because 321.1 shouldn't be that far off. I would assume that is going to be dropping with IAE in 2-3 weeks max. So you would expect that to be committed by now. I don't think it would be too hard, but I'm not a dev. There might be some tricky situations there. So A1 Spirit we got now. C1 Spirit is committed. It's coming in, which is good because it was tentative prior to this. Tumbrel Stank is committed. SRV is committed now, which is good. And we'll take a look at the SRV just to kind of make sure that the downstream teams have been added. Drake Cutter Scout is released. We got it in our hands. And tentative replication layer update. They actually released the first iteration of server meshing into the PTU, and they had an amazing panel on server meshing. So if you get a chance, go back and watch that. That's what this is. So if we get this replication layer, Pyro is not far off. I mean, it's not going to be dropping in 321 or even 322. I think is going to be their last patch of the year. I would not expect server meshing and Pyro to be in either of those, but might be pleasantly surprised if they get this working and chugging along. So if you get a chance, if you get in on the Pyro thing, if you see the PTU pop up, bombard that thing. Let's let's get it working. So that is the end of the release view. Let's pop on over to the progress tracker. So actor status 2. So we saw this one. Real quick, how I set this up. I always click over to the deliverables view. I usually set it to 1 quarter. In this context, I'm going to set it to 2 quarters just because it gives us a little bit more of a 1,000-foot view. And I can kind of show the things that are actually going to be bleeding into next year versus not, or that I don't think will. Actor status 2, they showed this off with the blood, sweat, and tears. Literally, they showed characters sweating, bleeding, and crying, and it looked amazing. I have no idea how it'll work in the game. I think we even finally saw a character taking multiple bites of food. Could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure I saw that in some of the pyro footage, and kind of a blink and you'll miss it moment. They did talk about hygiene. Basically just what we suspected, that NPCs, if you smell bad, they're going to start having snide remarks. They might not sell to you. They might not work with you. They didn't talk about DNA integrity, medical insurance, cybernetic limbs, or cloning, which is what I thought would be the next stage of medical gameplay. And it still might be. It could be that we'll get this top tier stuff pretty soon. It looked pretty far along. So we might be getting that by 3.22, and then all of this other stuff for medical tier 2, they'll hold off for the release of the Apollo or medical gameplay tier 2. I wouldn't even be surprised if they yank this out of actor status tier 2 and made its own category for medical tier 2. But that's where that one's at. In theory, it's done. It's not done. It's just the actor feature team, which could be the only team involved with this. I would assume on some of these, there'd be like the tech team, probably the UI team, especially for like DNA integrity. Maybe a mocap team if they wanted the cybernetic limbs, like if somebody got a leg torn off and they went to a peg leg, that's going to be a completely different walk cycle. I mean, I would prefer they just do these with keyframe animation, but what the hell do I know? Anyway, this one says it's going to end here. This one's going to drag into next year. I'm almost sure. Additional derelict settlements. I like to say this every time, that even when this one's done, they're always going to be rolling out new ships, which means they're always going to be making new derelicts of those ships. So this one, again, we may get like a 600i derelict settlement here, and then an MSR derelict settlement here, and then a Starfarer derelict settlement here, and on and on and on and on. They'll just keep making derelict settlement assets out of every single ship they can. And so this one is just, as long as they're building new ships, they're going to be making derelict settlement assets. So that one's going to draw out. I did want to point out Retaliator Gold Standard right there. This one was done in the long ago, but they're going to be implementing the first iteration of modularity. And in theory, the Retaliator is going to be the first one. They kind of showed it. I'll show it in a bit. I've got the my video pulled up here, and we'll just kind of go through all of the ships that they said would be releasing or worked on in the next 12 months, and the Retaliator was one of those. So we'll talk about that near the end. So let's keep going. They did talk about aerodynamic control surfaces. Looks like that's pretty far along. Just given how long ago they worked on this, I would assume the thing that is taking so long with this one is they have to put the air on. So basically the flaps that control how the air flows over the wings on every single ship in the game, which is going to take a little while. So that's aerodynamic control surfaces. The physics on it looked pretty good. Like they actually had, you could stall your ship out, and as you fell, you would dip down and then you catch yourself again on the aerodynamics. I would assume if you're in something like a caterpillar that is literally shaped like a brick, probably not going to right itself, is going to drop straight like an arrow into the ground. A very, very blunt arrow. Ambo Legionnaire, again, we'll be talking about that one. And Poas and Tokiai, interestingly, they did not talk about the Centokiai. The Spartan's been out for a while, but it's built on the Atlas chassis, which is kind of that big 8-wheeled vehicle form that they've got the Spartan, the Centurion, and the Ballista on. They showed off one that was a base builder that was basically just a flatbed that could put a trailer on it. I would expect that we're going to be getting that at some point relatively soon, within the next 3 to 6 months. Not the ability to build bases, but that sort of flatbed trailer. It's kind of one that's missing in the lineup, just something that could, a vehicle that could haul cargo. Now, do we have places that we could drop that cargo off where it would be at all faster to do it with a ground vehicle versus an air vehicle? No. So they'll have to think about that. And Post-Tokiai, they didn't talk about it. It's out here in mid-December. It looks really far along, but it's looked really far along for about 6 or 7 months. I know they had some issues with the UI elements, your HUD, but it sounds like they fixed that. So could we be getting it in December? We could, but I kind of doubt it. I think this one's a next year one, because right now we don't have any downstream teams. They're going to definitely take a stab at it with audio, because the last time they did audio for an Aegean ship was the Cartual, and that was 2016, I think. Maybe 2015. It's been a long while. So audio, UI, VFX, this one's going to be next year. It might be next Alien Week, which is June. Would be a good time to drop it. Maybe Invictus, which is around March, would make sense. AR map marker system rework. They showed this one off. Wow, did that look incredible. So you could actually download maps into your mobiGlass. You could drop pins. Other people could see those pins. You could even sell those pins and people could rate them. So you would say, at this location is a blah, 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 blah. And people could be like, ooh, 5 stars. That was really accurate. Or they could be like, 1 star. I found a bunch of Ninetales there and I got shot. That one looks incredible. I think we're getting this one sooner rather than later. End of the year, I doubt it, but within the next 3 to 4 months, I could actually see that. I would say probably March at the latest, barring some big blocker that we don't know about. It would be amazing if we got all of the UI elements for 322. That's what I'm crossing my fingers for, but leaving room open just in case it's next year. But this is one that could drop to us sooner rather than later. Argo SRV. No audio. Now, there should be an audio team involved in this, of course. I would assume the big tractor beams are going to have their own sounds. So there's no audio on here yet. Then again, they've got like probably a month to get those sounds in, and I would assume the SRV is going to be prioritized. So if you see that move to committed, even it being an Argo ship, there's a few Argo ships in the game now, and they could suck those sounds over. It's really the tractor beam noises and what they'll do. But Argo SRV, the ship itself is done. It looks like the tractor beams are done. The real question now is audio, and I don't think audio will need a full month to knock that one out. They're pretty solid. Asteroid facilities, this is one that I thought they would talk about. I think they did mention it very briefly in Todd Pappy's talk on Rastar and base building, that probably next to be building bases in space. That's what I think this is asteroid facilities. I I think they will also be much more prevalent in Pyro than they are in Stanton. Pyro being a system that was mined out. There should be a lot of facilities out there in their asteroid belts and everything else. Banu Merchantman. So they mentioned this one. Again, I'm going to get to that video and kind of go into more detail there, but basically the only thing they said was it's still got a pin in it. This is the reason why we dropped it. We haven't touched it since the last time we talked about it. They lost the 2 devs that were working on it. One of them was one of their most senior shipbuilders, so that was a pretty huge blow. So right now the Banu Merchantman is very much on ice. They did mention that spinning up the teams in Montreal, they might be going back and working on the backlog, and I would assume the Banu Merchantman would be probably a priority for that, especially once they roll out Pyro. And once server meshing is working, the Banu Merchantman would make sense. Like a ship that size would make sense. Boat movement parameters. During the Squadron 42 kind of fly through, or I'd almost call it a vertical slice, where they were showing off the different things you could do in Squadron 42 and how it had kind of changed. At one point, the hero character's in a boat kind of driving up the or motoring up this little river, and this cutlass flies over and he has to quickly get under cover. Boat movement parameters, that's one that's been done for ages, and I mentioned it, I think I talked about it a lot a year or so ago. But yeah, it was nice to see it in action. They really showed off the water physics. Looks good. Boreal Stalker is the big Hoth Wampa, basically a Sasquatch looking thing that lives on Microtech. We did not see this in CitCon, which was surprising because they spent like a good amount of time on that huge spline fly through on Microtech. They did show off Space Cows and the Stormfall, which are the space whales that live on Crusader. But they didn't show off the Boreal Stalker. Boreal Stalker is still out there. I wouldn't be surprised they're kind of holding it back to surprise us for people that are doing stuff on Microtech. Again, this is one of those that probably waiting on server meshing till the NPCs are acting correctly. They don't want to put in animal life and have it be T-posing. I'll put it that way. They want it to drop in and acting natural so people are wowed by it rather than laughing at it and turning it into yet another chair standing meme. Squadron 42. Chapter 1, but this is all the chapters, so all of these have stopped now and they've moved to polishing, which is huge. So I've been saying for probably about 9 months that it kind of felt like they were in that polishing phase. Now they've made it official. They've kind of looked at it and they said, yes, now we're in polishing. And my friend Knight55, if you haven't followed him, follow him. He was saying that beta is, for lack of a better word, it's just a term, that a project isn't in beta until the devs say it's in beta. So, I mean, it could be in a beta state for ages, but until they say we're in beta, yeah, by their definition, it's not in beta. In my definition, it's in beta because it's feature complete. They're just polishing. That's more a beta state to me. So I would say they're in beta. Character creator. We saw the character creator in, they had almost half a panel dedicated to it where Sean Tracy just went through the whole character creator. Really hoping we get that one soon. It looked like it was pretty far along. Will we get it before the end of the year? That's hard to say. I think they would drop it over to the Squadron 42 team first. But this is one, I would put it on a high probability that we get it within the next 3 months, the new character creator. They did say we're going to be getting the new hair before the end of the year. Which I had to watch a couple times because I was like, whoa, we're getting the whole character creator before the end of the year? And no, just the hair. Be nice if we got the whole thing before the end of the year, but I don't think it was ready to go yet. Crusader Spirit, we're going to be getting the C1 in theory right around here, mid-November. Should be pretty easy to knock out, especially if they're dropping in the vehicle tractor beams. That's kind of the only thing that makes the Crusader Spirit a little bit different, is that it has that vehicle tractor beam hanging off the back just to kind of pull stuff into the cargo bay. Yeah, cool stuff. Shouldn't be hard to do. We're still waiting on the E1, which is the passenger version, but we're probably not going to be seeing that one until whenever they decide to tackle passenger missions again. I would assume it's going to pop back onto the roadmap sometime next year, because that sort of, again, seems like something that would be dependent on server meshing. You want the NPCs acting naturally in order for something like that to work. So C1, not an issue. We're definitely getting that one by mid-November, especially since the A1 looks so good. Easy win for them. E1 sometime next year, maybe longer, depending on when they start doing stuff. Down here a ways, Duster faction. So we saw the Duster faction shown off. Ended back in July. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little more work to do. They are sort of the desert nomad guys. I believe we're going to see them in Stanton. Yeah, it says Stanton Gang right here. We'd probably see them on Daymar, and I think they mentioned 2 other moons like Cleo, but think like the desert-esque moons is where the Dusters would live. They looked pretty far along, looked pretty cool. I think they did specifically say that there's still work to do, so I wouldn't be surprised if these guys are next year sometime. We're probably not getting them immediately. EVA Tier 2, new EVA looks amazing. Again, this is one that's been knocked out for a while. Of course, they were doing polishing and stuff like that, I guess, so some things don't necessarily always show on the progress tracker, which is a little frustrating, to be honest, because if you're going to give us this tool, give us all the information. It's possible no one was working on it during this entire time, but it certainly looked like they did a lot of work on it. This one could drop anywhere from, I'd say, end of the year, like 322 to June of next year. I would hope it would be sooner than later. Fire extinguisher, fire hazard. We saw both of these in action. Fire hazard, again, done since May. We saw it in action. Looks like it would be, looks like it's ready to implement, at least as far as the fire hazard is concerned, or the fire extinguisher. For the fire hazard, the actual fire propagation, it looks like it's ready to go, but I would assume they're not going to roll out fire hazard until engineering is in, because then you, as an engineer, would be able to look at that little panel and say, okay, this area is on fire, so I need you guys to go here and you guys to go here, and I need to shut off the power to this area so it stops getting on fire. I need to vent this place out into space so there's no oxygen, and so on. While we're up here in fire section, the fire rats, they didn't show off the fire rats this time. That's another pyro gang that's pretty influential. FPS radar scanning, you saw that where they could put out a ping. That'll all come with the new UI system. Again, they showed that off at CitCon. I would assume they're going to drop all of the new UI stuff on us at once. Wouldn't be shocked if it was 322, so the December patch, but it could easily be next 3 months, so like March or something like that. But I would say it's going to be closer to the start of the year than the end of 2024. So I would say any further out than the next 6 months, something went wrong. Realistic weapon handling. This one was done a while back, but they showed off some new animations, like clearing a chamber, like if you had a jam with weapon wear and tear. It's possible that they actually had, they just kind of did a quick mocap or keyframe animation on the wear and tear, just rather than go back to this one. So it's possible it's rolled into that feature rather than this one. But I just thought I'd call attention to that. Freight elevators. We got to see freight elevators. They're going to be persistent. They're how you're going to interact with all the cargo you buy, all the cargo you sell, and your local inventory. So inventory on a station, or I would assume even an outpost. This is going to be how you interact. It looked, oh, and vehicles. Like you could call up your vehicles there in your hangar. And it goes along with the persistent hangar. Looked pretty far along. This one, I wouldn't be shocked if this one were about 6 months out. Even though it ends in December, I wouldn't be shocked if freight elevators are a little bit further out. Like they want to get server meshing up and running. Frontier clothing, they showed that off. It looks pretty cool. They actually have a new feature on it where they have a bunch of attachment points, and you could put these little pouches on those attachment points. Looked like there was, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, probably like 10 different places you could attach these little pouches, and you couldn't fit a whole lot of them. I think a hot dog was taking up like 75% of one, so they're not big, but it gives clothing utility, which is nice. Like they're going to get to a point where they're going to force you out of your armor and your undersuits and stuff like that, and you're going to need to wear clothing if you want to interact as a normal human being in most locations. So having that option to make it more utility driven is really cool. Headhunters faction, we saw these guys. They were, I believe this was the gang that was armor based. So the higher up in rank you go, the bulkier their armor gets. They had skulls and these big like fins and all this sort of stuff, whereas the low rank guys didn't. Moving on. Jump points, we got to see a little bit of the jump points. Little bit of the new quantum jumps. A little bit of the new quantum jump system too, which I never thought that looked particularly bad until I saw the new one, and I was like, I gotta have that. Jump points, we kind of saw a really quick fly through when they were doing that big spline thing, and looks a lot like it did before. Of course, you're going through a lot faster than we're used to seeing than we did when they did the Carrick reveal. So hard to say how twitchy those will be. I think they probably took out like the L-bends because those would be really tough to navigate. I think they want it to be a little hairy to go through, but not you're constantly ramming your ship out of it kind of a deal. I don't know. Maybe they do. Life support, again, this was part of the engineering game loop. I would expect engineering to kind of be the big mid-year reveal, so probably life support and all of that would be coming out in June, and I would assume server meshing, if they can knock it out in Pyro, would come out in March, so that they kind of have 3 months to hammer out all the things that are going wrong or goofing up with server meshing before they drop in the first huge game loop, which I just think they'd rather hammer out all the issues with server meshing and then drop in a big complex game loop like engineering next, as opposed to dropping them both at once and watching the servers burn. Probably not the best idea. Map and rare system rework, we saw that too. Basically, the Moby-Glass map, your radar is also your map, is also the star map, and you can zoom in and out. They didn't show off radar for like ships, but they've shown that a couple years back. I might have to do a show on that sometime, because I keep talking about how the new scanner and radar system, you can actually occlude yourself behind asteroids, which you can't do now. Like, one of the tricks I use when I'm bounty hunting NPCs is I will sit behind an asteroid and just let them shoot all of their missiles into the asteroid, and then I'll pop around, blow them up, and it's easy. But this new radar system, you won't be able to do that anymore, because you won't know where they are. You won't be able to tell if they're flying over, under, around, or whatever. So you'll have to keep an eye on them in order to keep them locked. MFD rework, same thing. So again, I would think that this is probably 3 months rather than 9 months. I would expect to see that pretty soon. Military multi-tool. So this is one of those I was talking about, I think a couple months ago, as I was saying, I wonder how the military multi-tool is any different. And it turns out that it has all of the tools built in. So it has a tractor beam, it has a cutter. I don't know if it has the medical tool, but it definitely had the cutter and the tractor beam built in. So he just kind of like takes it and switches what mode it is and does it that way. So as opposed to actually taking off the attachment and putting on another attachment, it was all one big tool, which is awesome. So I'm going to definitely have to get my hands on a few of those for the carnival. Mobiglass rework, again, we've seen it. Again, 3 months rather than 9 months. I would expect to see all of the UI improvements sooner rather than later. Persistent hangars, those are going to be dropping at the same time as the freight elevators, I would assume. Those will probably be dropping with server meshing, which is this next one down here. And we're probably not getting that until March, but I would assume, unlike a new game loop like engineering or the next tier of medical gameplay or the next tier of bounty hunting, which is also pretty close, that they didn't talk about, surprisingly, persistent hangars would be a good one to drop with server meshing, because, or the replication layer work that they're doing, because then you actually really get persistent space items and things that server meshing should take care of, without the complication of having millions of people on a server or really complicated game loops that are breaking things. The persistent hangars either work or they don't. And if people can't, if their beard moss doesn't persist, they're not going to lose their minds. Whereas if their ship explodes over and over and over again, they might. Physical damage and breakability. So this is Maelstrom. This is the part where when the Gladiusi were flying over the water and they stopped and they started blowing up those ruins, and the ruins were all cracking apart, or when they were in the big underground facility and he was behind the concrete barrier started to break apart. All that is the Maelstrom system, and looks pretty cool. Kind of hard to tell what all will be impacted. It's going to be just very, very specific assets that you'll be able to look at and you'll be able to be like, oh, that's one of the breakable things, so we can blow that up. But most everything else will be indestructible as it is now. So kind of the gee whiz thing, but I don't really see it being hugely useful, particularly in a persistent, massively multiplayer game, because if the ruins are able to be fully destructible, then the first person that goes there and mows all the ruins down is going to ruin it for everyone else, because it'll just be destroyed ruins forever. So I think it might be, it's cool looking, but I could see it being limited. New HUD, again, new UI. 3 months rather than 9 months, I hope. Pyro space stations, we saw those. Pyro system, saw those. Quantum simulation. So this one was an interesting omission from CitCon. And then there was a post late last week from one of the CIG devs talking about quantum, sort of saying, a lot of people interpret it as they've given up on the quantum simulation. If you were here for socks or iCache, both of those were kind of put on ice and then modified into something else, like iCache eventually became object container streaming, and it worked, or persistent A streaming, not object container streams, PEZ. So it went from iCache to PEZ, and iCache didn't work, PEZ did. It could be the same thing with the quantum simulation, but what I think is actually happening here is that Tony's kind of worked it as far as it can go until they have server meshing in, and then he'll be able to implement it, and then it'll work fine. Or at least they'll be able to test it in a live environment. They say it's working on the back end, but it's kind of isolated, and they haven't dumped it on us yet. This is one of those that's going to definitely wait until post server meshing, but I do not think that they've given up on quantum. So the sort of breathless content creator suggesting that, just remember they need clicks too. Reputation hostility, they kind of briefly talked about this, both with hygiene, but they also mentioned that some of the gangs, if you didn't have a good reputation with them, you wouldn't be able to get into like their areas. You might not even be able to dock at their station, which is a pretty big deal in Pyro, because if you're not able to refuel at that station, in Stanton you can pretty much refuel anywhere. In Pyro, it is probably going to be based on your reputation with the gang that controls that station. So if you're on the outs with all these gangs because you're a bounty hunter, hope you got a couple Starfare buddies, because you're not going to be able to land anywhere. Although they did say that there would be secret ways to get in there, but probably not secret ways to refill or refuel. Resource management, that is sort of the key, not only to engineering gameplay, but also settlements, cities, Rastar, when you start making your own settlements. That'll be huge. I skipped Rastar, but you'll just have to trust me on that. Apparently in the next 12 months, they're going to be working on, you can make your own bases, which is, it looked pretty cool. RSI Apollo, they did not mention this one, but we know they're working on it, because, I mean, right here, we know they're working on it. But they didn't show it off in their little ship thing, which I'm going to get to in the end. And they didn't mention it at all, but we know they're working on the Apollo. This would be a good one to drop with the Tier 2 medical. Plus, they're working on RSI ships. They're going to work on the Polaris, the Zeus. There looked like there was another ship there that could be an RSI ship. And we've got the Apollo. It's possible the weird ship that I'm going to show you in this video is actually the Apollo, but they would have had to completely tear it up and completely redesign the outside, which I don't think they do. Could be wrong. I don't think they would. Polaris, again, it is not ending in December. They're going to try to finish by the end of next year. So think December 2024. I'm sure they would love to get it out by November. The white box looked pretty far along, but the gray box is going to take a while because it's a huge ship. Sliding, they had a demo on sliding, looked pretty cool. And here it is, Squadron 42 polishing. And no, they're not finishing it here. They're doing it quarter by quarter, so after December passes, probably right around here, think about halfway through January, they'll have all their meetings again and reset what they're going to be doing for the next year. You'll see this jump out again prior to March, and then it'll keep going. If they're really going to drop Squadron 42 in Q4 of next year, you would expect to see this polishing stop right around probably here, like right in this area, because then they're going to start printing the gold masters, and that's it. It's out the door. Swimming. So this one, again, I'm putting it up here because it was one of the few omissions that they had from all the new traversal options that we had. They showed off the ladder, they showed off sliding, they showed off the new prone, they showed off EVA. They did not show swimming, but it does look like swimming's getting wrapped up. So wouldn't be surprised if we got swimming at the same time, or maybe it's waiting for the water physics to come along in a different direction, or they want to do underwater things. Who knows? So now we're down into all the unannounced vehicles. So we can close off a few of these. This one, take your pick. I would say this one right here, this 23-week sprint, was probably the Cutter Scout. We know the other one is the Cutter Expedition, which is this one, pretty sure. So pretty safe bet on that. This 11 weeks one was the Fury LX. We've got an 8-week sprint here, which, just judging from where it ends, I would think this one would stretch out a little bit. I have my suspicions on which one that is. And then this 28 sprint here for just vehicle concept art, I think that one was actually the Zeus. We do have like a straight to flyable 35 weeks, so that's a small to medium ship right here. I don't think that's the Cutter, so it's something else, and so we could speculate on that, and we'll get there in a minute. Underground facilities, they show off underground facilities. These things are going to be a game in a box. You're going to be able to drop these things anywhere, and they're either going to be like city unto themselves, like a trade location, or they're going to be both a trade location and a place you can just kind of land and raid the whole thing. They look pretty neat. These things are going to be game changing, I would hope. Down here, they did show off the Volt weapons, which run on heat. So if you can manage the heat and keep them in kind of this sweet zone, they can do like a beam weapon, or otherwise they'll overheat and sputter out, or they'll just kind of like do little pulses, which are less effective. Looks like a pretty cool mechanic. Yeah, looking forward to getting those. And then weapon misfire and wear. Again, looks awesome. Again, we haven't seen how we're going to actually fix our weapons once they start doing this. So once your gun starts misfiring, how the hell do you fix it? And we don't know. They didn't explain that part. They just kind of showed what it would do. And then 0G push-pull, they showed off the sort of 0G traversal, the EVA, which looks amazing. I really, really hope we get that before the end of the year. If not, I would say next 3 months is reasonable. So when I say next 3 months, I mean 3 months into the year. So March. Yeah. So I would expect new EVA anywhere from here to March. Don't think we get in 321, but 322, maybe. March, definitely. I could easily see that dropping then. Okay, so let's go over here. So this is just my video. They haven't dropped this one live yet. I realized that I missed one when I did my little review. Again, this is my video, so credit to me for ripping this. I missed this one when I was going through and just kind of naming all the ships that are in this little thing. It's kind of cool. This is the next 12 months. These are the ones they're going to be dropping. This could be the small medium ship. Looks like a little hoverbike crotch rocket, which is awesome. That is exactly what I want. All the current hoverbikes are big. Like the Dragonfly seems like it's about the size of a sedan pretty much. So yeah, if they can get one out that's small, and I mean, you can see this thing that a Nox is probably here to here. So this is 2/3 the size of a Nox, which is one of the smallest bikes in the game right now. So kind of cool. yeah, I'll be picking one of these up for sure, just because the utility on something that size, pretty great. So let's go through this. So obviously you got the X1 here, you've got the X1 Force, the X1 Standard, and the X1 Racer. I'm trying to remember if there is another version. Actually, that's the Standard, that's the Force. The Force, I think, had 2 size ones and more armor. It might just have 1 size 1, but more armor. Either way, X1, I am guessing we're going to see it before the end of the year. So yeah, I put links here in my video. I think this could actually be a variant of the Ursa. It's either a variant of the Ursa or they're going to do a gold standard on the regular Ursa rather than the Lynx. So you can ignore the Lynx. I'm pretty sure it's not the Lynx. It's either going to be a variant that's like has a bed in it, or it'll have a medical bed, or it could be they're going to do a gold standard pass on the Ursa because the Ursa is kind of a dated model at this point. And it doesn't have any working buttons or anything. I don't think any of its components can be pulled. So it might just be a gold standard, but it could easily be a Ursa variant, which would be easy win for CIG. Probably not too hard to do. It's not a very big ship or vehicle. So a lot of people are speculating on this one that it's some kind of special MPUV. It could be. It easily could be its own variant. So if you don't know what the MPUV is, or if you don't know what it does, this part right here is actually modular. So it has the escape pods. If you've ever been inside an 890 and you go into the escape pods where it's got all the jump seats on the side, that's the pod that the personnel version of the MPUV is carrying. And it also has a cargo version, but those pods just drop off and it can slap new ones in there. In the commercial for, I think it was the Hull C, you could see the MPUV in this area right here. It was carrying the big, 32 SEU, whatever the big boxes are, sort of sideways. So it's kind of carrying it like a T. So here's the box. The MPUV was carrying it this way and landing it on there. So that's really the purpose for the MPUV, is that they're multi-utility vehicles that can do all sorts of things. The thing that's different about this one is that it has this up here. Which InfoRunners was speculating that could be like a little extender arm that comes out. I think it could actually be an attachment point, because they've shown off an MPV, or it leaked that there was an MPV out there with some sort of attachment right here on the nose. So I could see that being an attachment point where you could put a salvage beam, or more likely a tractor beam. So I wouldn't be surprised when tractor beams drop that we get this version where you can put a tractor beam onto this part. I'm wondering if this might not just be the way the MPV is going to look. And you can add the pods if you want to, or you can add whatever you want to this attachment point, but this will be the MPUV. That's kind of my running theory right now. It easily could be another variant, but I don't think the MPV actually needs a variant. Just, it's a utility vehicle, so just make that an attachment point where you can put an arm or a tractor beam or a salvage beam or a mining beam. Now this guy's weird. So when I first saw this, I was like, oh, well, it's the C1. It's got to be the C1. But it has an elevator right here, and it looks like it's got a sideway in. It does look very spirity. Those almost look like the wings that pop up. The nose of it also looks a little bit RSI. So I'm not sure. It could be a different ship entirely than the C1, which is what I thought it was. So this is the one that I was talking about. You can sort of see the person is right there to kind of give you a sense for scale. The sort of dark horse thought in my head was, what if this is the Apollo and they completely tossed the outside design of it in favor of the new sort of Dorito design that they've been going for RSI for like the last couple years? Would be interesting. Like, what if this is the Apollo? You'd have your medical elevator right there. I'm trying to remember if the Apollo actually had an elevator for just the back ramp. But they might have completely redesigned the outside to match the sort of Zeus aesthetic and the Galaxy aesthetic and the Polaris aesthetic. Could totally be wrong. I could easily see this being the C1. I just don't know why it has this ramp here, or not the ramp, but the elevator. And the elevator is not something that Crusader does. They're more ramps. But you look at that nose right there. Oh, and that Banu thing comes in earlier. There we go. That's where that Banu was. So I missed that title. So this right here definitely looks like a big Fury. So again, there's your person right there. So this thing's big. It's at least freelancer size. And it might, if it has 2 levels there, maybe constellation size and volume, not necessarily length and width and all of that. One thing I was thinking that would be a dark horse for this is they stopped work on the Banu Merchantman because they didn't have an asset pack for it. The only Banu ship that they've got is the Banu Defender, and there's not really a lot to build off of there. There's not really a lot of, oh, we're going to take that bed in this section of hallway here, because it's literally just one room with a couple beds shoved into the side, and it looks awesome, but it's not the kind of thing that you can build a whole ship interior sort of mindset out or zeitgeist around. That could be Banu. I would almost say it could go Xi'an, but Xi'an goes more vertically, so unless these animate up like they do something like this, I don't think it's Xi'an. It could be Mirai, the people who made the Fury, but that looks awfully big for a high performance vehicle. I don't know why you would make a performance vehicle that's the size of easily a freelancer. So I am going to just do wishful thinking and hopium that's a Banu ship, because that thing looks awesome. Legionnaire. This is sort of a drop ship. It's actually a boarding ship. It's got a sort of docking tube that comes out of its nose. It can hack another ship and make the other ship give it permission to dock. And then it can come up and jam that nose, that sort of proboscis, onto the docking ring of another ship and vomit out 10 Marines into that ship. So kind of a cool ship. And in a pinch, it can be used as a drop ship for 10 Marines. Very cool looking ship. This, of course, is the Zeus. You can tell because it's got the underslung gun, which is very unique, and it's kind of got the ramp in the back. So this will be the cargo version of the Zeus. Again, really cool ship, on sale for at least like another 2 weeks. Here's the Retaliator. I'm assuming this will not only be the gold standard, this will also be the implementation of modularity. They said this would be the first ship to have modularity. So right now we have the bomber variant, which has 8 size 9 torpedoes, I believe. Or is it 6? It carries a lot of big torpedoes. But those can actually pull out, and there's a cargo version and a troop transport version, where you've got a module here and a module back here. one thing that InfoRunners pointed out that I missed is the tally, and this could be like a white box model that they just kind of throw in there, because I mean, you can see that the landing gear on the tally actually goes vertically when it lands. It's got kind of these weird cane-like legs that come out there, and they're not down right now. So this could just be like a white box version that they just kind of went, we need a silhouette, throw it in there. But there's no turret here. So there should be a turret here, 2 turrets back here, and I think another turret right here. This thing doesn't have any turrets on it. So they might have simplified down the Retaliator, because it was one of the very, very early ships we got in the game. And I think they did a couple little tweaks to it 6 or 7 years ago. But by and large, it hasn't been changed much. But it needs a crew of, let's see, 6 or 7 to really be effective if you want to fill all those turrets. I'm sure when they looked at this thing for a gold standard pass, they said, we do not need a ship like a bomber to have a crew of 7. Maybe 3 to 4 would be good, because this thing is the size of a Constellation. So they might have simplified down the guns. I would be surprised if it lost all of its turrets, but it might have 3 as opposed to, I think, what, the 6th? I think it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think it's got 6 turrets on it. Like, a couple of them are pretty small, but it's got a couple big ones up here. And none of them are pilot controlled. The only thing that pilot controls is the torpedoes. But anyway, I think that this is just the gold standard pass. It's not going to be a variant. And of course, Big Daddy Polaris. Does this mean that we're getting it next year? Maybe. It's a human ship. It's a combat ship. The only thing that could slow it down is its size. But they're pumping out a lot of RSI ships right now. So the Polaris should be, if it dropped for Q4 of next year, I wouldn't be shocked. I'll put it that way. And gang, that's all I got for now. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Blah, blah, blah. Catch me next time.